Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don. Welcome. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments onto whatever platform you happen to be watching on, and they will show up here in my chat room if you are watching live, and we can talk directly. And today is Friday. It's our ordinary weekend roundup day. So I'm going to talk about at least some stories that are in the news. I'm um, not overly enthusiastic about this week's news. Um, some weeks we've had very positive, very inspiring stories. I don't particularly feel that way this week, but that's on me, and we'll see what we may find as we go. Um, If you're watching, you have anything you would like to discuss, please throw it in. Hello to Reverend Antonio in the chat room. It's good to see you, Antonio. And hello to Mary Cavalcante in the chat room. It's good to see you, Mary. And as you as you will know, if you regularly watch Corellian TV, I was on Tarot Thursday last night with Reverend Mary Hawk, and we were doing mini readings for people. That was a lot of fun. We were using the um, Tarot of Hecate, and that was a lot of fun. And one of the stories for this week, and one of the happier stories, is we're bringing the Tarot of Hecate back. As you may know, it's been unavailable for several years, and it is now available again for pre-order. $60 at CorellianPublishing.com under the Infinite Tarot button. And as soon as we have just 10 pre-orders, we will send that order into the publishers. And that will be, I imagine, relatively soon. And if you are interested um, in your own copy of the Tarot of Hecate, if you've been waiting for it to come back, well, it is back, and now is the time to get it. And as I was saying, this is the Tarot of Hecate. Now, the new ones will have the blue back from the Infinite Tarot, but it's still the same cards, still the same artwork. And hello to Renee in the chat room. Hello to Ed the Pagan in the chat room. And so Tarot of Hecate is, I guess, our first story for today. And hello to Thompson in the chat room. It's good to see you, Thompson. And this is a good, happy story. Also, this evening at 6 p.m. Eastern, I think it's 6 p.m. Eastern, we have a chakra meditation for Pride Month by Reverend Brian Ellicott Cook. And I hope that you will join us for that. That will be very, very positive, very inspiring. And hello to Lynn in the chat room. And Mary says, I absolutely love my Tarot of Hecate deck. And I'm so glad that you do. It was a work of love on my part over the course of many years to finally get it out. I've told the story several times that I made it back in the 1980s with the intention of having it published through Gemini Press, but that is not what came to pass. And it was actually only about 20 years ago that we finally got it published. And Mary says, "Oh, awesome! About the Pride Month chakra meditation. I will be there. Wonderful. I think it will be a lovely event." Um, and Ed the Pagan is in the chat room. He is down at Gaia Thrift in downtown Danville. And we are having dollar days this weekend. So if you're in the Danville area, stop by Gaia Thrift. And we have a number of items for just $1 as part of the opening of the store. And Now we have a lot of very nice items. We also have some things at higher prices, but the whole front of the store is priced at $1, and so you can get some very good bargains. Now, as to our actual stories, the first one I want to talk about, last week we talked about Tennessee posting, no, Louisiana posting the Ten Commandments in all of their classrooms. Last month on, or the previous pagan news broadcast, we talked about Tennessee debating this same possible law. Today, I want to talk about Oklahoma mandating biblical instruction in all classrooms. And I am absolutely appalled by this. Of course, it's news in that it's happening now, but it's not a surprise. But in a manner of speaking, it's absolutely horrifying for a variety of reasons. The way this came about is that Oklahoma law Oklahoma has a new state requirement that classifies the Bible as a foundational historical text. And the Superintendent Ryan Walters announced on Thursday during a meeting of the state's Board of Education that every public school teacher will soon be required to have a Bible in their classroom and to be teaching from it. And made the statement that the Bible is an indispensable historical and cultural touchstone. Well, there's a certain truth to that. But went on to say that Oklahoma students are unable to properly contextualize the foundation of our nation without the Bible, which is absolutely not true. And for those of us who belong to other non-biblical religions, this is a major use of public schools for proselytization. And hello to Fox for Witch in the chat room, and Mary Hawk in the chat room, and Fox for Witch says, "Wait, what?" And yeah, that's kind of the thing. Mary Cavalcante says, "That's outrageous. I'm so glad I homeschool Matthew." Yeah, it should be outrageous to us in particular. It should be outrageous to everyone, but it should especially be outrageous to those of us from other religions. And the Bible is absolutely not in any way a cornerstone of the foundation of the United States or US law. US law is based on British common law, which in turn is based on Germanic tribal law, which has nothing to do with the Bible or with biblical cultures. Now, did the Bible have a social influence? Well, with the coming of Christianity, yes. But for the most part, it didn't really touch the law. It certainly has nothing to do with the foundation of the American Constitution, because the Bible's a monarchic book. It's not at all in favor of democracy. It's in favor of authoritarian governments. During the great fight between the monarchies and the coming republics, the Christian churches were pretty much all on the side of the monarchies. That's one of the reasons why, to this day, so many Christians hate Freemasons who were on the side of the republics. There is no stretch of the imagination by which the Bible had any effect on the American Constitution. It's almost anti-biblical in terms of its sentiment. It was based on both Native American and ancient pagan concepts, and particularly on the concepts of the philosophy movement of the 18th century, but not even remotely on biblical concepts. But that's what they're going to be teaching people. And how they resolve that in their mind is a matter of mental gymnastics. But then one of the problems that conservative Christians have that they don't know they have is they have a very false version of history. Most people do. And Mary Hawke points out that European monarchs frequently claim divine right to rule from the Bible. Yes, exactly. The Bible was the bulwark of those European monarchies. One of the reasons Europe became Christian is that the pagan monarchs who came previously had their powers limited in many ways, but Christian monarchs did not. Christian monarchs were considered the representatives of God and could do pretty much anything. And so the monarchs had a reason to convert themselves to Christianity, which also gave them theoretically the right to convert their entire populations, which is what happened. This is not um, anything to do with any kind of democracy or republic. And um, one of the things that used to catch my attention were all those movies in the 50s in particular, 40s and 50s that were on biblical stories that tried to somehow tie the Bible to democratic ideas. It doesn't tie. It's not at all what that book is about. So claiming it as a foundational aspect of the country really is simply not true in any political sense. And these students are going to get a very twisted view of history, but that's the point. This is not really about history. This is about dominance. And the thing that I find so depressing about this, and we've talked about it before on this program, is as a community, we had years to prepare for this fight. We had years to try to head it off. We had years to prepare our response. And for the most part, we simply ignored it. There were individuals like myself, like Ed the Pagan, who were trying to sound the alarm. But for the most part, not only did the community not listen, it was quite hostile to that message. I can remember people in this community, when I tried to tell them this was happening, basically told me to stick to reporting on events and cosmology, or that I simply didn't know what I was talking about. And I imagine those people have not opened their eyes now because, if they were going to open their eyes, they'd have opened them then. But I hope the people who are watching me now have a different mindset. I hope that you understand this is a real problem that we have to face. Um, and to be honest, I think those people who weren't willing to listen to this message will probably just quietly go back to Christianity because it obviously wasn't that important to them to be pagan, or they'd have been more concerned. Um, when Sir Patrick McCollum was fighting for pagan civil rights in the prison system, I can remember certain individuals just being horrified um, that I was giving this story any attention. Mary Cavalcante in the chat room says, "We've definitely missed the warning." Yes, indeed. Scary times are coming if we don't nip this in the bud right away. Well, I hate to tell you, but we've missed the chance to nip it in the bud. There is no nipping it in the bud. Now the question becomes, how do we survive this? How do we prepare for the next confrontation? Because we've lost the current one. There is no winning it, no matter what. I know there are people who are looking to the presidential election thinking that makes a difference. It does not. The fight is already lost because the Supreme Court has made its position pretty clear, and a large portion of the country has already elected the conservative majorities who are going to vote this into law. Now, part of the effect of that may mean that our country is moving in a more feudalist sort of way. That is to say that where you live in the country may drastically affect what your rights are. I do not perceive anything like this coming in Illinois, for example, unless it's forced on us from the federal government. Last week, I was talking about how in Illinois we actually have put in a law against book banning. And there are other parts of the country that will be equally resistant to this movement. But where you are, really is in many ways going to become far more important in the future. Now, I'm not saying there's nothing we can do, but nipping it in the bud or avoiding the fight is past. Obviously, political organization would be beneficial. Obviously, supporting um, any candidate who opposes this kind of nonsense is beneficial. But can we avoid it at this point? No. We can only react to it because we, as a community, deliberately gave up the ability to meet it head on. And those of us in the community who are willing to stand up for our rights, we need to do it now. Now, I want to say hello to Byron Mallard in the chat room, and it's always an honor to see Byron. And Byron says, when we have dealt with this in the local school system, we were helped by the Americans United for Separation of Church and State. If you are looking for a large organization to help you and to find ways to work with this, Americans United for Separation of Church and State is a major one to work with. Um, if you're looking for where to fight this, in the local school boards is probably the most effective place. Your local elections are the most effective place. But it's not just a matter of going out and voting. It's going to take more than that. Not from every individual, but by and large. Um, we're past easy answers at this point. We basically at this point, um, as a community, are the Jews of Spain, um, or for that matter, the Jews of Germany in the late 1920s. Um, early 1930s, and we'd better take notice of it. And Byron also points out the Lady Liberty League, which is absolutely a wonderful resource. So if you find that you're being badly affected by these things, these are some of the organizations that you can go to for help. Um, but it's going to be very hard for some of our people to avoid being badly affected by these things, depending on where they live. And what does happen later in this year, what happens to the composition of Congress, for example, it's going to have a lot to do with just how bad and how quick we have to deal with this. And if you think we don't have to deal with it, you're being deliberately blind. Um, my attitude at this point is largely a local one, focusing on what we can do in our areas to make ourselves safe or as safe as possible. Um, I'm not sure there's anything that can be done about this situation in Oklahoma at this point, or Louisiana, except maybe homeschooling your children. But I'm not 100% certain that that will completely avoid the problem. Um, it certainly won't avoid the wider social impact of it. Um, but we've missed that chance for this moment. We need to be thinking of the farther future. We need to be preparing for when this pendulum starts to swing in a different direction. And that day certainly will come. Um, but it certainly doesn't appear to be tomorrow. And Byron says it's vital to organize our local communities. And yes, it is vital for us to organize and to organize locally. And coming in the future, there are some announcements in terms of things in that direction, but not today. But there are some things that may help with that, which are down the line. But we need to be thinking of local organization. We need to be thinking of actual actions we can take to make a difference to the future. In a lot of ways, the present is lost. Um, it was lost several years ago, actually. But we had 25 years to prepare for it, and we did not. So I can't complain too loudly because we had the options to avoid it. We were warned, we didn't do it. So now, when we are warned to prepare for our next opportunity, we'd better listen. We'd better start organizing. We'd better be thinking in terms of the fact that our rights are not guaranteed. Our future is not guaranteed. Our freedoms are not guaranteed. And anyone who says that can't happen in this country is not paying attention. Now, will it happen in this country the way it might have happened in certain other countries? Probably not. But that doesn't really make it better. Um, and I think what the Christian nationalists are looking for is primarily cultural domination, not necessarily um, genocidally wiping anybody out, but absolutely holding them down. And possibly our only benefit in this situation is I don't think we're high on their list because they noticed that we knew all about this and did nothing. So they're not worried about us. We've given them no reason to be worried about us. We have not shown ourselves to be a formidable community. Um, and that might actually be in our favor because they don't feel a need to deal with us immediately. We are part of the wiping up afterwards. If you are not familiar with Project 2025, you should probably become familiar with it. I haven't really mentioned that too often because I kind of assumed we all were aware of that. But if you're not, go look it up. Um, because next year we'll be dealing with that. No matter who wins the presidential election, we'll be dealing with it. The only possible thing that might delay it um, might have to do more with congressional and local elections. And the presidential election will not have no effect. But even without a total victory, there will be enough Christian dominionist, Christian nationalist power to be putting this into effect. So it's not really a matter for the future. It's a matter for right now. For ourselves, how we're going to react to it in the long run, how we're going to survive it, and how we're going to come back for it, those are questions for the future. And they're questions we'll come back to. Um, and, you know, if we are extraordinarily lucky, maybe I am being a bit pessimistic. However, our news story for today does not lead me to believe that. And, I'm sure there are going to be some people out there, we'll call them idiots, who say, well, why is this so bad? They're just teaching the Bible as history. Now, if you have any critical thinking skills, you know that's not true. This is an act of proselytization and cultural dominance. It's meant to tell any non-Christian child in that school system that they are inferior, that they are in the wrong movement, and to subtly force them to leave the religions of their own birth, um, or at least hide them, because you know that it's not going to be used in the way that they're putting it on the surface. And Mary Hawk says, the hell they're teaching the Bible is history. Well, exactly, they're not. We all know that. And the people who pushed this also know it. They want the 10 Commandments in every classroom, but that one about not bearing false witness, they don't pay much attention to. Because they've readily lied in several cases about what they're going to do. And we have to remember when they say, oh, we're only going so far, this is not the case. It is not the truth. When a Christian nationalist says to you, oh, I believe in judicial precedent, I believe in stare decisis, it's not true. I'm not going to make any major upsets, it's not true. we're only going to teach biblical history, it's not true. I think part of that is that, and this the Christian dominionists have said this in the past, that they don't feel that a promise or an oath to someone outside of their movement counts. And when they did have more cultural dominance, people outside of their movement often weren't even allowed to testify in court on the premise that their oaths, being not biblical, did not count. This was a big thing with Native Americans. And don't be entirely surprised if we don't see an attempt to do that. Um, and Mary Hawk says, well, let's start counting politicians and preachers who commit adultery. Well, not only that, but let's start with the anti-LGBT politicians who are later found in the men's room on their knees. I mean, at this point, these are cultural tropes, um, but it doesn't matter because they have one set of rules for themselves, which is do whatever you want, and a different set of rules for everyone else. Because if you've missed it, all of these 10 commandments, all of these biblical rules are for us, not for them. How many times has the minister who spends every week extorting the people in their church to do this and do that and follow this rule and follow that rule, turned out to have a dozen mistresses? It turned out to be having those mistresses get abortions, or it turned out to be sleeping with um, underage children, sleeping with the boys in the bathroom constantly. We just had one. One of the leaders of one of the major megachurches. It just came out that he had abused a 12-year-old girl over the course of several years. And the church is busy trying to say, well, it's not our fault for this reason or that reason. And hello to Reverend Eric in the chat room. And that they thought they knew that he had had an extramarital affair, but they didn't know she was only 12. And, that might be true. But it's no excuse for him. But I think if you were to talk to him, he probably doesn't feel he did anything wrong, because those rules are for everyone else. And I'm not quite sure what to say about that. It is certainly a very entitled philosophy, but one of the big subjects of the last few years has been the degree of entitlement in this community, the United States in particular, but not exclusively. Certainly Western Europe, and that comes out of the Bible. The idea that you are the chosen ones who can do everything you want, and everyone else must obey these things. And if we're expecting them to follow their own rules, there too we're being foolish. They're not going to follow their own rules, and they're not going to do what they say they're going to do. When they say that there are limits to their intentions, there are not. If they are able to do everything they want to do, we're basically going back to the Dark Ages. Now, I will say, and we'll end on a moment of hopefulness, I don't believe for a moment they can do everything they want to do. I think that there are far too many tools in society now to prevent that. But then I probably was sitting in the Roman Empire saying the same thing. Don't worry about these radicals. We're far too advanced a civilization to fall to them. And they did. However, if you look at the Eastern Roman Empire, which continued for 1,000 years after the Western Empire fell, their fall into the Dark Ages was not comparable. It was Western Europe, which was not as advanced, that fell so far backwards. So I think what I would say is we still have many tools to work with. We still have a heterogeneous society. And like I say, I personally think we're heading toward a somewhat feudal model where we live is going to make a huge difference to how we can live. And we'd better start taking it into account. And hello to Steve in the chat room. It's good to see you. I think that's a horrible situation. I've lived my entire life in a country where, for the most part, I could go anywhere and have mostly the same rights. And I don't think that's going to be true in the latter part of my life. But I am hoping to keep at least some of those rights in the place where I do live. Um, and hello to Brenda in the chat room who says, yes, it's pessimistic, but as I've said, welcome to the real life Handmaid's Tale. And yeah, I don't know that I'm hopeful that we can prevent it from going that far, but only if we now listen to the warning and do what little is still left to us to do. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when, again, both I and Ed the Pagan were making this warning to people, there was so much more we could have done, but we didn't do it. We did what we could. If you've followed the growth of the Christian dominionist / Christian nationalist movement through pagan journalism, up until maybe the last 10 years, the only place you were following it was our journalism. Now, in the last 10 years, more people became aware of it, finally. But yeah, this is where we're at. And I know we're going to have more depressing stories on our weekly roundup in the future, but hopefully we're going to have some positive ones too, and maybe increasingly some positive suggestions of what we can do. Right now, my only positive suggestion for you for the immediate future is to look to the fall elections and be a one-issue voter. And that one issue are your rights as a pagan, as a non-Christian. Nothing else really should matter to you. It doesn't matter what the economy is doing if you can't play a full role in it. It doesn't matter what anything else is doing if you cannot play a role in it. If you cannot live your own life, nothing else really should matter. This should be our one and only issue. And that is my message to you for today. And having said that, we can also hope that Spirit is on our side. That if we will take the steps that are in front of us, the universe will aid us. And I do believe that one way or another, we will survive. I do believe that we have lost this particular battle in many ways, but we've not lost the war. But then that war has been going on for at least 2,000 years. And yeah, we need to keep on keeping on, but with a lot more focus on preserving our rights. So with that, I want to thank you for joining me. And I'll be back next week. And we will have many more interesting things to talk about. And until then, have a wonderful weekend. And let us close with our prayer, as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you put in front of us in our lives, and we ask you to help us to take advantage of those things. Help us to see clearly the warning signs on the path in front of us, and help us to make good choices in how to deal with our situations. And as we go forward in the social situation that we find ourselves in, help us to find the best way to preserve our rights as individuals and as a community as we go forward. Help us to find the routes to success and the routes to survival that undoubtedly are there. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love, and knowing you are always with us. From respect, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. May you be blessed now and always.